Okay, so for my final project, I chose the topic of social emotional learning as an emotional support teacher. This is a very important topic to me to discuss. So let's get into it. There are 5 contents of this presentation: introduction, change over time, and counter arguments, how we'll create better teachers, supporting evidence, and my conclusion. All right, so what are social skills? This is obviously important to talk about when talking about social emotional learning. The 5 social and emotional competencies from the CASEL framework are as follows: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. We want students to understand these competencies when teaching SEL. And I have included some other related concepts and practices to know when talking about social and emotional learning. Trauma-informed approaches. How can you be sensitive to students who have experienced trauma? And how can you relate trauma-informed approaches to SEL? And we are going to talk about that. ACEs as well as PACEs. ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. I have some examples here on the left, like emotional abuse, physical neglect, divorce, incarcerated relative. What can it lead to? Some examples on the right here: drug use, alcoholism, depression, diabetes, heart disease. And what are PACEs? These are positive, advantageous childhood experiences. We want to provide students with as many PACEs as possible to help offset ACEs. What's really interesting about using trauma-informed approaches, I found additional data that says SEL practices teach skills that may be weakened when students are dealing with the effects of trauma. As stated before, ACEs refer to adverse childhood experiences. What many people refer to as counter ACEs include close friends, neighbors, comforting beliefs, positive regard for school, right? We want to do that when we're providing students with PACEs. So what can be done? What can we do? Well, this is where social emotional learning comes in. And here are some frequently asked questions. What are the benefits of social emotional learning? Well, it promotes effective classroom instruction. How do you implement it? Embed it into academics in alignment with academic standards. Necessary components: we need to generalize those skills, not just teach them, but teach them how to use them in different environments. And examples of teaching social skills: well, reading and writing stories and poems. Why are we teaching social emotional learning? Well, emotions affect learning. Through the research I conducted, I found that emotions influence where new information is processed in the brain. For learning to become a memory, it must be directed through the emotional filter called the amygdala, along the route to the reflective higher brain, the prefrontal cortex. When this happens, the brain takes a responsible look at the situation, finds a better way to handle it. All right, let's move on to change over time and counter arguments. So over time, what has changed with social emotional learning? Well, changes in school and state participation. I found that since 2016, participation has grown from 8 states to more than 30 states and 1 U.S. territory, collectively representing more than 11,850 school districts, 67,000 schools, 2 million teachers, 35 million students, preschool to high school. But today, all 50 U.S. states have SEL standards or competencies for preschool. 11 states have extended preschool standards to early elementary, and 18 states have standards K to 12. Another thing that has changed over time with social emotional learning is that it started with just SEL, but now it's led to teaching social emotional learning with trauma-informed approaches. It's almost like we're putting them together, right, to get the best possible outcome. Another important piece of information that I found is that equity in education begins with creating structures that support students inclusive of their social emotional needs. Students exposed to trauma perform best in schools that adopt trauma-sensitive practices. Makes sense, right? Many of these trauma-sensitive practices naturally prepare students to learn social emotional skills as the trauma-informed staff model social emotional learning. Mastery of these skills helps lead to success. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, we do have to talk about counter arguments. It is important to kind of see the other perspective and then talk about, well, what can we do to kind of help change these minds of people that feel this way? So there's all these ideas that it's a non-academic common core, that it's a fad in education. It's an experiment, that people are calling it a hoax. It's faux psychology. They're saying there's no data to support it, which is absolutely false. Some are saying it's psychological manipulation, indoctrination. What's really interesting that it goes against the beliefs of freeborn American citizens. Well, These are interesting perspectives that people take, yet there is data to support the effectiveness of social emotional learning. And what we're really trying to achieve is the best possible outcome for students in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and even later in life. How will SEL create better teachers? Classroom environment. This was a major component that I found when conducting research. When students' emotional and social needs are not effectively managed, both behavioral and academic outcomes suffer. When students' emotional and social needs are effectively managed, students meet desired academic and behavioral outcomes. I found this is a direct quote from one of the articles that I was reading. Effectively teaching social skills, it promotes effective classroom instruction to support the learning of all students across the curriculum, right? So when we talk about UDL, Universal Design for Learning, SEL is not just for emotional support students, it's for everyone. And just like I said, it's better for everyone. SEL helps address trauma and build resilience in students and adults. SEL has the ability to change how teachers view and help students. This is really important. I decided to include this from an article that I found. It says that teaching SEL skills, rather than assuming students have these skills, eliminates the antiquated, discriminatory, or deficit views of children. Like, why don't they know that, right? That's a deficit view. Instead of, okay, I realize a student doesn't know, what can I do to teach them? This addresses, SEL helps address students who are affected by trauma so they can find success in school. We have to change our mindset about these things. Students don't come into third grade knowing how to multiply, right? We teach them those skills. Students don't come into fifth grade knowing how to deal with difficult situations. We need to teach them that as well. All right, continuing on with supporting evidence. What are the benefits of SEL? When teaching SEL in correlation with academics, students develop stronger social and emotional skills, which support better learning because students will be less disruptive and more engaged. And continuing, there's an overall student success with teaching social emotional learning. We have stronger academic performance, increased student engagement, and improved behavior. Why teach SEL? Everything we said sounds great, but what are the specifics? Why are we doing it? Well, emotions affect learning positively or negatively. We see that emotions drive attention, which drives learning, memory, and just about anything else. We can't expect students to be able to sit down and remember a social studies lesson if they're focused on something challenging that happened last night. And secondly, SEL has positive effects on mental health. It improves academic achievement by an average of 11%, increases appropriate social behavior, improves students' attitudes, and reduces depression and stress. All right, moving on to conclusions. How can your school do it? And I didn't put how can you do it. It's really important that it's a school-wide approach. I have listed 5 things through all the articles and the research that I've read. Here are 5 main things that I think if you implement these, social emotional learning can be effective. Incorporate the CASEL framework in academics, those 5 social skills that we talked about previously. Provide students with opportunities for PACEs, positive, advantageous childhood experiences. Create a really good relationship with your students. Model the concepts that you teach. Take a trauma-informed approach to teaching SEL. How can you be sensitive to students experiencing trauma? And this is really important as the school here, number 5, engage in intentional structures and systems, and 3 specific ones: staffing and hiring, design of classroom and other spaces, and school-wide routines. These all together can help push SEL to the next level and really lead to what everybody's looking for, which are really positive effects on student learning, student outcomes, and overall student success in life. Here are my references and resources, and that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.